you for coming out to Virtual Venture Cafe, everyone. My name is Shaheen Hakimi. I'm the director here at Venture Cafe. It is an absolute pleasure to be here on this session with you. When our friends in Arizona are a part of Arizona BioScience Week right now, Venture Cafe is having a potential expansion to the West Coast. It'll be our first site there, and we thought, what better way to try and get it off the ground than partnering with our friends at AZBio and Joan Koerber-Walker, who is the president and CEO over there. She reached out to me and she thought, how do we get some synergy between the East Coast and the West Coast? We thought we should bring Travis McCready, the managing director of the US Life Sciences market at Jones Lang Lasalle. And we thought, let's have a conversation. Let's see how new city meets old city, and we'll try and get some things going. We will have a conversation between those two, followed by startup showcases from our region, one with Rouzbeh Taghizadeh from Oxocell, he's the Chief Scientific Officer, and with Stephen Albert Johnson, the founder and CEO at Calvary. So if I went through their entire CVs, we would never get to the actual session. So Joan, why don't I let you take it away, and why don't you tell us a little bit about AZ BioScience Week and yourself?
Thank you so much, Shaheen. It is great to be here. And when you look at Massachusetts and you look at Arizona, we have a lot of similarities, but we do have some challenges. As Travis and I have talked about before, y'all had a bit of a head start on building your bioscience sector and a few more assets than we did in the gross number of research universities. But we're coming up fast. So Arizona BioScience Week is our 5th annual event where we bring together our Arizona innovator community with our life science investor friends from all over the country. Normally we do that face-to-face and have phenomenal time together. This time we had to pivot and do it in a more virtual format, but that allows us to do new things like this. And we're really excited to be here with all of you. Arizona has, interestingly, Massachusetts and Arizona are about the same size population-wise. We have a growing life science community of about 30,000 life science researchers, innovators, and entrepreneurs, and about 1,500 companies or firms, as the economic development folks like to say. Some of the really cool things that we have going on here, strengths in Arizona are diagnostics. We're the home of the global headquarters of Roche Tissue Diagnostics, who had a big announcement this week. We're home to the #1 university in the world for innovation. Sorry about that, Travis. For the 6th year running, Arizona State University, and some other really great things. So we're thrilled to be here and welcome you all and talk a little bit about how you build ecosystems, how we build ecosystems while you guys are building companies. Your turn, Travis.
My turn, huh? After all that shade you were throwing my way, Joan.
Absolutely.
First off, Shaheen, thank you for inviting me to be here, particularly because it gives me an opportunity to mix it up again with Joan. Joan and I have known each other for a couple of years now. And our first experience, as we were just chatting before the Zoom began, our first experience together was when I was then the president and CEO of the Massachusetts Life Sciences Center. And I came out to your neck of the woods, and we had a little fun explaining and cajoling and teaching the value of a robust life sciences ecosystem to a group of national federal legislators. It was a great experience. And Joan, you do wonderful things out in Arizona, and you should be really proud of both Arizona Bio, AZBio, as well as the ecosystem that you've stewarded out there. It's really quite extraordinary.
Thanks.
My background requires a couple of fingers of scotch. So just hit me on LinkedIn. You can see my background. But my new role as managing director of U.S. life sciences markets for Jones Lang Lasalle is something I'm incredibly excited about. So if you don't mind me taking like 15 or 30 seconds on that. JLL is the leading global commercial real estate advisory. And we have, not surprisingly, a very large footprint in the life sciences and provide services somewhat end-to-end, which would be inclusive of tenant representation, representing investors, real estate brokers, real estate developers, and the like. One of the fun things about this new role, overseeing this vertical, is, as the saying goes in the Black church, God loves all his children. So I'm not stumping for any one particular market. I think the best thing that we can bring to the table at JLL is a passion for excellence in real estate and an understanding that real estate and the life sciences have a symbiotic relationship. So we're very much interested in providing the services and expertise necessary to help all the scientists, companies, investors, and developers bring life-saving therapies and devices and innovations to market more quickly, effectively, and efficiently. So super excited about this new role. So I know that all being said, I know we want to talk AZ and the Commonwealth. So fire away, Joan. Let's have at it.
All right. So, one of the things that's really interesting is hopefully you'll get to come out and see me before I come to see you in Boston during Bio Week. Because
absolutely.
That may be the first time that we all can get together in person again. But when we look at the two communities and the levels of investment that have been made over the last 2 decades from a government perspective, the other things that I think are really exciting are the collaborations that we see from Boston in particular and Phoenix, and how those two communities really have forged some really close working relationships. And we see that, I want everybody to know, when Travis was at the Mass Life Sciences Center, anytime I was looking for best practices, information, things that we could do to build our ecosystem, he was extremely kind and generous. And so as he's now taking over national responsibility for JLL, I'm going to make sure that he has all of the assets he needs from Arizona. But when we look at how we're growing ecosystems, I think a lot of the things that we work on are not dissimilar, whether it is entrepreneurial support programs, internship programs to create the next generation, and of course, access to capital, are really the things that AZBio has been very, very focused on. And I know that has been key to building your ecosystem too.
Yeah, indeed. I think those ingredients that you mentioned have been really critical and important in the past couple of decades in accelerating the ecosystem. But I do like to remind folks that this ecosystem, there was no chia pet moment. Just spread wet seeds and let it grow. There was no such moment for the life sciences ecosystem. This is actually the product of arguably well over a century of work that was public-private in nature. The government supporting this ecosystem through a combination of investment, regulatory support, and public policy. There was a ton of private support from risk capital, whether that be venture, family foundation, or what have you. A bunch of support from industry, the decades worth of traffic coming through this ecosystem to lease space proximate to the research universities. And of course, the academic institutions, whether they be the research institutions or the healthcare institutions. And there's just been this really yeasty environment of collaboration amongst all these professional sectors that have led to building this collaborative spirit, this moment where, yeah, we seem to be firing on all cylinders here in Massachusetts. But I think, one of the things that you and I, we were talking about with the legislators is public policy and public officials must be patient, must have intestinal fortitude, and must stick with it. These sorts of ecosystems do not develop overnight, but the public dollar can be patient capital if we allow it to, in helping steward the development of these ecosystems.
Thanks, Travis. And I think, that brings to a really important point. Here in Arizona, as Travis knows, I actually keep track of the money. And over the last 20 years, we've now seen over $23 billion invested in a combination of university assets, healthcare assets, companies, of course, and bringing those things together. And one of the things that I want to share with our audience is the importance of having a strategic plan, just as you had at Mass Life Sciences and Massachusetts has had. And here in Arizona, we have the Arizona's BioScience Roadmap, which is a strategic plan that has been shepherded by the Flynn Foundation with the help of Techonomy Partners for now over 2 decades. And that plan has allowed us to really identify what those strategic milestones are and then what we need to do to hit them. And just as Travis is generous with his materials, anyone that goes to Flynn, FLINN.org, and clicks on the biosciences feature, all of the plans, all of the metrics, all of the milestones that we've used to go from practically nothing to, rising up as one of the fastest growing life science ecosystems in the country, we get a lot. It's a lot easier for us to grow by percentage because we started a lot smaller than you are right now. But if you go to flynn.org, you will find all of those resources. And for anybody that's on the phone that's looking for those resources like that, it is open source for any community that needs it.
Now, what would you say, looking out at the ecosystem, the past, let's just use 5 years. Mm-hmm. You can be inclusive of the pandemic or not, but what would you say have been the 1 or 2 surprises in terms of the ease of growth in the ecosystem, and the 1 or 2 challenges that still plague or keep you up at night as you're looking to grow the ecosystem?
So I would say on the surprises side, 20 years ago, we had a very strong rivalry between Arizona State University and the University of Arizona, our 2 largest universities. And ASU was at that time a medium-sized university and growing. They're now the 1st or 2nd largest public university in the country. But there was a lot of confrontation and head bashing, not a lot of collaboration. And that we have really seen change. There's a lot more collaboration now. I think it was driven by leadership, but it was also driven from the grassroots up. A great example of that is the Arizona Wellbeing Commons that was established between the 3 universities, where they have project teams and they all work on different projects to do things. So that would be, I think, overcoming that barrier to collaboration and starting what they like to call here in Arizona, I know it's a little cheesy, but the collaborative gene. The point is that they're here, people come here because people will work with you. You can get things done. You can do things that are different and are outside the norm. We don't have 100 years of history. We started with a blank page 2 decades ago. So it gives you a little more latitude to do crazy things, which is really good because I'm crazy. So, so we really try and work through that. Challenges, we are a flyover state, okay? So one of the things that we really have to work on is access to capital. And it's something that I've been working on now for close to a decade. 3 years ago, or no, actually now 6 years ago, we got a family office out of New York that funded a 3-year benchmarking study to go and look at all of the different ecosystems from an access to capital perspective around the country. And I went to see Eric Galvey in St. Louis at Biogenerator, and my heart goes out to Eric and the team on the loss of Bill Danforth this week. He was an amazing, amazing man.
He's a real giant in the innovation community.
And so we looked at all of the models and what we wanted to, basically beg, borrow, or steal, and put together our own. We then went to the U.S. Department of Commerce and the EDA and have developed a model we call AZ Advances, where we are in the process of fundraising to establish a $200 million endowment, which then we hope to appropriately invest, and then use our 5% distribution each year to invest in early stage. So if we hit our $200 million goal, that's $10 million in early stage investment. That will help to seed the innovations that are growing here in Arizona. And we have also are working with the EDA right now, fingers crossed, on a second grant, which will put a program we have called AZBio Peers, which stands for Professional Education, Engagement, and Resource Sharing on steroids. And that will then provide a lot of that entrepreneurial support for the engaged life science community. I think the other thing that's really important as we address access to capital is, we all have to reach out. So for instance, we just had Bioscience Week. I have 30 amazing 10-minute presentations on video in our Arizona BioScience Week app. So for investors, I'm going to keep that system open through February. And if you're an accredited investor, you can go in and have private access to those videos or tell your analyst to do it, right? Which is what very often happens. To look at some of the really cool opportunities that are out there. And then work with them. And since I've been personally investing in early stage since, and now some of you that are on this call before you were born, so since 1987, and did my first life science investment in 2007, I have a decent network of friends that I can reach out to and say, hey, look at this. But if you are an accredited investor and you want access to what I've got in that system, you are very welcome. And just send me an email at jkw@azbio.org and I'll get you set up.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I would say, it's interesting, your comment about University of Arizona and Arizona State. That's one of the, I think, biggest misconceptions that I still encounter here in the greater Boston area, particularly as it relates to Harvard and MIT, that there is actually some degree of celebrity deathmatch competition between the two institutions, where in fact, when you peel away the top layer, there are probably more targeted and discrete areas of collaboration between the two universities than there are actually differences between the two. There's so much connective tissue, and it's that ability to be able to connect, collaborate, and targetedly compete, co-opetition, which makes, and you can repeat that for, and throw in Northeastern, BU, BC, or any of the institutions. It's that level of respectful engagement, I think, which makes this community so unique and highly verdant and productive as it relates to the life sciences. So I know you're supposed to be interviewing me, but I'm going to keep on asking the questions. Let's talk a little bit about diagnostics, if you don't mind.
We actually have one question I'd like to get to on this topic, if we may.
Okay.
Sure. Go for it.
People want to know, when you talk about this collaboration, is it often inter-university, or would you say that the collaboration needs to be the connective tissue between, let's say, research and development in the universities and hospitals and other institutions, or would you say within the universities themselves?
Yes.
Where is the collaboration essentially?
I'm not being cheeky when I say yes. I mean, it's both within the universities and also inter and intra university. Sometimes it might be a completely different structure that gets established, that is designed, hardwired to be a collaboration between universities. So, for example, the most widely known is the Broad Institute. It's the Broad Institute at Harvard and MIT. Another organization is called CIMIT, CIMIT, which is a relationship between Harvard, MIT, and the Harvard hospitals that was born out of a need for practitioners at the hospitals to have access to engineering solutions coming out of Harvard and MIT. And I could go on for hours. There are these inter and intra university structured, calcified, hardwired opportunities from the PI all the way up to faculty and administrators to work with one another under the philosophy that literally and figuratively all boats rise when that occurs. And I'm sure the same thing is happening right now, Joan, between Arizona State and University of Arizona.
Absolutely. And I think, one of the things we found really interesting a few years ago, the University of Arizona actually transferred its hospital assets to Banner Health, which is the largest health system here. And that brought in a major influx of capital that really has spurred a lot of the clinical trials activity, which is great.
Yeah, and I think, as I think about it, there are really two uber categories of that kind of collaboration that are important in terms of a robust and healthy ecosystem. One is just collaboration that is pure play basic research, where you get a PI from one university and a PI from another university collaborating on a proposal to the NSF or what have you to advance a particular area of knowledge. So, for example, I'm participating in one of these collaboratives right now focused on cell agriculture. And the universities involved are WPI, MIT, and a couple of others. There's nothing translational about it. This is pure research. The second category is, importantly, and this is where I think a lot of ecosystems get tripped up, is translational collaboration, translational research that is designed to be commercialized. And how you not only collaborate inter-university, but then also, importantly, engage the private sector, engage industry. And surprisingly, even to this day, there are a lot of universities that are out there that have a philosophical disagreement with industry engagement. The industry is evil. Industry will somehow pollute the bona fides of research. But I think having this second category is really what will separate a successful innovation ecosystem from one that is just and there's nothing wrong with this, but that will be just about basic research.
Absolutely. And the interesting thing is, and I would encourage you guys to go and watch Celebrating Life in Science. There's an interview with Jeff Trent. And it's in the first couple of minutes of the program. But Jeff was at the time wrapping up the end of the Human Genome Project. He was from Arizona originally and was looking at where he was going to put his Translational Genomics Research Institute, which is now coming up on its 20th anniversary. And that became the catalyst for a lot of the focus we have on translational research here in Arizona, as well as the emphasis now on taking that translational research, that research where you can sit across from a patient and make a difference in their life today, not 20 years from now.
Right.
We really have seen that, and Jeff's a lot more eloquent in talking about it than I am. So I would really encourage you guys to check that out.
Awesome.
Okay, cool. Travis, you were alluding a little bit to diagnostics. Is that something that you can hard look at right now?
No, I'm super excited about diagnostics. Even pre-COVID and pre-pandemic, we saw a ton of activity. A lot of it driven by the improved enabling technologies that are out there, driven by AI ML. And the greater ability to process more data and improve visibility using artificial intelligence, algorithmic learning, and the like. And I'm curious, Joan, to hear sort of the spin-off activity that's come out as a result of Roche Diagnostics out there, and whether you're seeing the same type of growth in activity in the diagnostics market in Arizona.
So we are seeing a lot of growth in diagnostics. In Tucson, when you look at some of the spin out, two that are interesting are Accelerate Diagnostics and HTG Molecular Diagnostics, which both in one way or another, tangentially came out of the success of Ventana Medical's acquisition by Roche Diagnostics, going back now almost 10 years. The interesting thing that we're seeing though in that community is the Critical Path Institute and the work that's being done there in the pre-competitive space, specifically around artificial intelligence and machine learning, or AI ML. We had a phenomenal presentation earlier today from Jackson Burton, who is in charge of the data, the quantitative medicine project there, and all of the different things that they're doing. And if you go to our YouTube page to watch the video of the program, you'll also find Jackson's presentation that really talks about what you're talking about, Travis, and how, getting that data together, but more importantly, bringing the companies and the stakeholders together in a pre-competitive space so that we can start to find new paradigms of diagnostics. The other thing that I think is going to be critically important relative to diagnostics, and as we move further north into Phoenix, we have, Exact Sciences just acquired a company in Phoenix and is expanding in Arizona on a number of different oncology diagnostics platforms. We also have a little company called Beacon Biomedical that has an ELISA test that can do colon cancer screening. And since I'm coming up on a decade birthday and I've always had clean tests, I went and got that, and let me tell you, it was a lot nicer than getting a colonoscopy. So, so we, just kind of went through some of those things. And
Don't remind me, Joan.
And I don't want to, oh yeah, but I don't want to steal Stefan's thunder, because I think he will be able to also talk a little bit about some of the really exciting things that are happening in diagnostics. But the more we know, the more data we can get, the more we're going to get there. But the other thing we really have to look at is we have not figured out how to properly reimburse on diagnostics yet. And putting on my investor hat, we got to solve that problem. Because if we don't, these companies are not going to get the growth capital that they need to really take over a particular market. And, we're seeing that right now with some instability in the markets in general, on the private equity and the venture capital side, because of the recent executive orders, which we've gone through this drill now every 2 years, trying to figure out, what exactly is the landscape going to be for reimbursement on pharmaceuticals, medical devices, diagnostics, the whole bit. And, as an investor, I'm not going to put my money into something if I don't see an exit at some point in the future. So we really, from an investor perspective, are going to have to address that, because if we don't, we are going to stifle innovation in probably the most extreme way that we have since the 06-08 recession. So we really need to figure that one out pretty fast. Sean, I don't want to cut too far into the time for our innovators, because they're much more interesting than we are. Sorry, Travis. But but why don't we, give them a chance to show, real life examples of what's going on, and then if we have time at the end, maybe all four of us can talk.
Awesome.
Cool. So I believe that we're going to start the presentations from the startup side off with Stephen Johnson.
Shall I take it?
It's your show, my friend.
Okay, I just do this verbally because I thought it would be more interactive than putting up a bunch of slides. I'm Stephen Johnson. I'm a inventor, founder, CEO of Calvary Inc. Relative to Joan's background, Calvary is a spin-off from the Biodesign Institute, which is the flagship translational research institute for Arizona State University. So our goal is, our mission statement is to end deaths from cancer worldwide. You may see that or something similar to that on a lot of companies' mission statement banners, but frankly, I think we are the only ones with the technologies that could possibly do that. So the technology is based on some discoveries we made about recurrent mistakes that tumors make that everybody missed, even in Boston. And based on that, we were able to develop some technologies that are really very unique. We were talking about diagnostics. Our first rollout will be a diagnostic for the early detection of cancer. And a lot of companies have been trying to do that based on nucleic acids out of the blood, and they've been largely failed, including Grail. And so the failure is at sensitivity level. There aren't enough nucleic acids in the blood to detect it at an early stage. We have an orthogonal technology that's based on antibodies raised to the tumor, and we can detect cancer early where other people can't. The next phase will be to match that diagnostic with a vaccine, an off-the-shelf vaccine that's matched to every cancer type and stage. So for instance, stage 1 breast cancer will have a stage 1 breast cancer vaccine that'll be a co-diagnostic vaccine combination, which is a unique product, which may answer some of the issues you raised about reimbursement, Joan. And we're the only company that can make off-the-shelf vaccines for any tumor type. And then finally, our third phase will be a vaccine that can prevent cancer. We are fairly confident that we can generate a vaccine that will prevent any type of cancer. we've already designed that vaccine. It's in a clinical trial in dogs. We have the largest interventional trial in dogs ongoing right now, where we've enrolled 400 of 800 dogs testing a vaccine to actually prevent cancer. There's an interesting aspect about and unique aspect about our products. They're all inexpensive to produce. And so we are probably the only company that can address those cancer goals worldwide. You're not going to be using a immunotherapeutic worldwide. You're not going to be even using Exact Sciences, a diagnostic worldwide, because they're too expensive. And on the same level, because of that inexpensiveness, we can, those products directly are applied to the vet world. We can make a dog diagnostic and dog vaccine where other companies can't. So our business plan here is to license and partner the human diagnostic off. We've already been in discussions with Roche and Exact about this. Do the same for the vet diagnostics and vaccines. We've already been in discussion with Zoetis and Elanco about this. Calvary will keep the production of the diagnostic assay in-house. And the primary reason for that is not only for the revenue it generates, but because of the information it generates. Every time 10 microliters of blood is applied to one of the arrays that we produce, it creates a digitation of the immune system of that person, which creates a huge amount of important health data. So we want to keep control over that. We'll also keep control over the production of the human therapeutic and prophylactic vaccines. What we expect is, as a company, is to have 2 liquidity events within the next 2 years based on the licensing and partnership of the diagnostics for humans and dogs. As I said, we'll be retaining our revenue stream from the chip production and from the development of therapeutic vaccines in people. The team that we have together is maybe one of our weaker points because it's very strong on the technology development. We have people that have worked with me for over 12 years on getting all of this, and the engineering and the immunology and everything else that goes into this. We have, I think, the best team in the world for doing what we're doing, but we will have to build out our C and D level people, which is a difficulty in Arizona. As an aside, it's harder to build out the C and D level people here. We're currently doing a bridge raise, and that bridge raise for $5 million is basically to buy the equipment we need to expand our chip production. That's our limiting factor right now for our diagnostic, which at least one of them is ready for commercialization. And then we'll be going into after that into a $50 million A raise, where that largely is going to go into initiating and expanding the clinical trials that we have going both in dogs and people. So that's our company. I'm glad to answer any questions about it.
So Stefan, how was it that the story of the science that you guys are working on ended up in a Super Bowl commercial?
Oh, so it wasn't actually, it ended up, so there was a Super Bowl commercial for the vet school at the University of Wisconsin. I don't know if you saw it, but it was about how good this guy's treatment was at the University of Wisconsin for a dog who had a hemangiosarcoma. The guy that was running that and treating that dog was the guy that's leading our clinical trial operations at the University of Wisconsin for our preventative vaccine. So that commercial brought in a bunch of money into Wisconsin indirectly into our clinical trials that we have. So we indirectly benefited from a football commercial.
You know, Steven, something my former mentor told me was never let the truth get in the way of a good. So just ride with it, okay?
Yeah.
I like that. Very cool. Okay. If we have any additional questions, the chat box is here open. I know sometimes people think of things later. So that option is there for sure.
Can I ask a question? Can you
Absolutely,
hear me?
Nick.
Hey.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, great. So fabulous platform technology you have. I run an investor group in Boston. So I'm very, very interested. So could you just go over a little bit of your IP and also your timeline?
Okay, so we've been working on this vaccine and diagnostic stuff for about 12 years. So we had some of the first patent was filed in 2006. We have patents starting to issue from 2009. We have over 21 patents issued and 25 in process in this general area of diagnostics and vaccines. So we have a pretty good patent position. The timeline is in terms of the dog diagnostics, we'll start commercializing that this year. And the timeline on the dog preventative vaccine will depend on the clinical trial, but we expect a readout in April on the efficacy of that clinical trial. If it's deemed efficacious, we'll commercialize a product immediately for a dog preventative vaccine. For the human diagnostic, we expect to have a licensing and partnership next year, and the same thing for the dog diagnostic and vaccine. Does that answer your question?
That answers the question. Also on your bridge raise, what's the valuation?
40.
40.
Yeah.
40 pre. Great. I will follow up.
Thank you.
Wheeling and dealing. I like it. Okay. Then I believe it is time to bring up our last showcase from the East Coast this time. I'd like to introduce Rizbe Tarizadeh. He is the co-founder and chief scientific officer at OxoCell. Rizbe, why don't you tell us a little bit more about OxoCell?
Thanks, Shaheen. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm actually going to go old school, and I prepared just a few slides that I'll go through. So
very cool.
Let me get this going. Oh, there we go. Are you able to see my screen?
Not yet. If you're trying to share, you got to click the screen you're trying to share and then click the share. I don't know if you can see the options.
Yeah. How about now?
There you are. Yep, we got you.
Beautiful. Okay. So it's a pleasure being here representing the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the diverse biotechnology and biopharmaceutical ecosystem that we have here. Our company, OxoCell, I think represents the diversity that exists within the Massachusetts and specifically the Cambridge-Boston area ecosystem. So the company that I'm part of, that I co-founded, is called OxoCell, and we're in the regenerative medicine and stem cell-based therapies industry. And when I talk about stem cells, I'm not referring to embryonic stem cells. I'm referring to, which have their own ethical issues. I'm referring to adult tissue-derived stem cells. So tissue and organs in our bodies have a very rare population of stem cells in general. And it's these stem cells that maintain production of mature functional cells that do the job of that our body needs. And it's these stem cells that maintain those tissues and organs during our lifetime. And one could make the argument it's the aging of stem cells that correlates with aging in humans in general. So I'm the co-founder and chief scientific officer of the company. And just a little bit of background, we were founded in 2008, so we're 12 years old. We're a little bit more, I think, mature, just relatively speaking. We're located in Kendall Square here in Cambridge. Our corporate offices and our laboratory is located in Cambridge. Interestingly, our laboratory is located at Lab Central. If you don't know of Lab Central, it's a state of Massachusetts funded launch pad for early stage and small biotech companies here in Cambridge. So we're funded by angel investors, and our primary research focus, or really focus, is to develop the therapeutic potential of the primitive native stem cells that are found in in solid tissue sources in general, but more specifically in afterbirth tissue. So in tissue that comes out after a baby's born that is discarded as medical waste. So just a little bit of I guess, history. So we started the company in 2008. We initiated our research and development, and we developed a novel method to extract stem cells from umbilical cord tissue and for banking and for clinical use. So we pioneered this technology, and we licensed this technology to umbilical cord blood banks around the world. In 2011, we licensed this to the second largest umbilical cord blood bank here in the United States, BioCord. And that's their current technology today to collect and process umbilical cord tissue and to collect the stem cells from those tissues for their clients for future clinical use. We in 2013, we commenced research and development on a novel first-in-class closed system that processes these solid tissues in a more systematic, standardized method. And one of the key aspects of this is that it uses mechanical means to break down the tissue and not enzymatic or biochemical means, which has both scientific, biological, and regulatory downstream impact. And this system we refer to as the ACPX, the exocell processing system. In 2014, we got our first patents issued, and the FDA designated us as laboratory equipment. For the past 4 years, we've been marketing this technology to tissue banks around the world. In 2018, I published a seminal paper on for the first time, showing the impact of enzymes and biochemicals on the cells from these tissues. And it's these cells that we're using for treating and hopefully helping patients with their ailments. And this year, we're planning on initiating our INDs. So just a little bit more about our technology, I guess our more current technology. So the ACPX, it's a sterile single-use disposable tool to process solid tissue to release cells. It consists of a mincer component, so mechanically breaking down the tissue in a series of bags that comes in a kit like this. It's one-time use disposable. And from these tissues, and really what we're trying to do is take an entire tissue and fractionate it into its various components. So we're taking umbilical cord tissue in this case and collecting the native cells. Since we're cutting the tissue, not blending the tissue, we actually have tissue pieces that are remnants here that are left behind. And also we have the acellularized solution of matrices and proteins, most often comprising of extracellular matrix proteins. But these three components are what comprise that specific tissue, that umbilical cord tissue. So this is a novel technology. We have 14 issued patents on it. And again, in essence, we're taking a solid tissue here, umbilical cord tissue, and breaking down to its various components. And that's really what we're trying to do. So we can use these cells that are in here in this cryo bag here. We can actually use these for treating a multitude of different ailments that patients currently are dealing with. And also these different products as well that can be used to derive other useful, meaningful products. And I've specifically referred to umbilical cord, but we've used this technology on a host of other tissues as well. And I'm just gonna end by, I guess, talking and just showing the patent portfolio that we have, that we've gathered over the past 12 years, which I'm very proud of, and certainly inclusive or exclusive of just the US patents. We do have international patents as well. And I'll end there, and I'll take any questions. Thank you.
So can I ask a question? What's your primary use, do you think, of first for these cells clinically?
So there's actually clinical trials going on right now looking at, since we're in this pandemic, using these specific stem cells. And the specific stem cells are referred to as mesenchymal stem stromal cells. And what they are is these stem cells that comprises the umbilical cord tissue. And these stem cells and basically just the cells in general and within the umbilical cord tissue are known to immunoregulate or suppress their environment. So if you think about umbilical cord tissue and why these cells exist within the umbilical cord tissue, one could make the argument that they're there because to suppress the possible immune reaction between the mother and the developing fetus. So we're harnessing that capability to use it for autoimmune diseases such as type 1 diabetes, Crohn's, but certainly in the pandemics, knowing that a big part of what the coronavirus and the disease COVID, how it impacts the body, part of that is the cytokine storm that basically makes the lungs fill up with liquid. And so and that's one of the reasons why, at least in the current treatments, we're using steroids to reduce that inflammatory response from the body, from the host. And so certainly these stem cells could be used to do the same.
Okay,
so this is Joan. Interestingly, we have here in Arizona cord blood registry, which is part of Generate Life Sciences. And for those of you that aren't familiar with CBR is the largest private stem cell bank in the world that manages, that archives or holds for the patient both cord tissue and cord blood. So that could be a potential collaboration between our two communities. And if you want to reach out to me, my email's been in the chat. You want to reach out to me, I'm more than happy. Actually, their executive VP for stem cell is on my board of directors, so we could, at least make a connection for you. It's interesting, Stefan, to your point on the science and the clinical applications. Joanna Kurtzberg at Duke has been doing some really interesting clinical trials, specifically around cord blood transfer or cord blood transfer and the applications for autism and for neurological trauma. So one of the very earliest ones was for cerebral palsy, because obviously that's a situation where it was not a genetic flaw within the structure of the cells. It was a trauma during the birthing process in most cases. And they've had some really interesting, in those early trials, applications on the neurology side. When I talked to Joanna about Crohn's disease, which is a particular interest of mine because of some family issues, the expectation was at least for using your own stem cells if you develop Crohn's or something like that later, because we think that it may be genetic more than epigenetic. It may or may not solve that problem. So I'd be really interesting to see how your research continues to progress.
Yeah, thank you for that, Joan. So, being in this industry for a very long time, we've collaborated with CBR. We know them very well. Dr. Kurtzberg, she was putting on the Cord Blood Connect meeting today. I just got off that meeting to get onto here. So I'm very familiar with these folks in the industry. I'm glad that we have that connection.
Terrific.
Yes.
What are the first markets you plan on addressing?
So this has been I guess a slow pace of progression in terms of our development. So the first phase was developing the technology, getting the technology infused and being utilized in the marketplace, which it currently is and has been. And really the next phase is really to work together with our customers that are using these technologies and move forward to getting regulatory FDA approval for these technologies for various indications. So we've done the easiest part. The hard part still remains, which is to go into the clinical setting, and obviously those are very expensive trials to run, and they're very complex trials to design. If the trials aren't designed appropriately with the appropriate time points or endpoints, you may spend a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort, and just have a lot of data that may not give you a conclusive answer. So there's a lot of experience that goes into this next phase of moving into the clinics. But certainly there's a lot of the trials that Dr. Kurtzberg is working on, such as autism and cerebral palsy, as well as even hematological disorders. Certainly those are areas of interest of ours. But and obviously the other indications of autoimmune diseases and possibly some effort towards understanding how we can treat COVID with these cells. A lot of work ahead, to say the least.
So Shaheen, it looks like we're coming up on the witching hour.
That's it. This has been a fun hour. I've really enjoyed hearing about both Stephen and Ruzbe's technologies right now and their applications. We've heard from the left, we've heard from the East Coast, and we're in the middle of Arizona BioScience Week. And as you were all mentioning to Travis and Joan, the collaboration needs to go up. So we'll be doing more things like this. I know you two, Travis and Joan, will be collaborating again soon. And this has been fun. So I really appreciate all of you for hopping on here today. We'll get something like this going again in the future.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Shaheen. Thank you, everybody. Good to meet everyone.
Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.